So it's my distinct honor to introduce our final keynote speaker for today. Peter B. Stevens is a dynamic thought leader known for extending agile principles beyond software to innovate in personal agility, leadership, and hardware development. With extensive experience driving successful transformations, he consistently changed conventional thinking with fresh insights. He is also the founder of SART Networks. Please join me in welcoming Peter as he shares his vision, inspires us to explore new horizons. Please give a big round of applause.
Ayubuwan, Colombo. Good evening, everyone. It is a delight to be here. Are you delighted to be here? Are you having a good conference? I can't hear you. Okay, much better. I'd like to start this evening, first finding out if my clicker works. I'm going to talk to you about hidden truths of agility and leadership. And I'd like to start with a story. Now, you see the title behind you. What if I told you? What if I told you my first client was delighted with agility? Would you think I'm telling the truth, or am I telling you a fairy tale? Or are we living in the Matrix? Well, let's hear the whole story. Let's start from the beginning of the project, or more precisely, where I started to work on the project. Now, I'm not going to show you a picture of my client at this point because his face was nowhere near this happy. Okay? We had a problem. The project had started a little bit over 2 years before, and a month or so before I got involved, they made their first delivery. And you know that part about working software? Well, it worked on my machine, kind of, sort of, but it was buggy and it was missing essential must criteria for our client's client, the pilot customer. This was an influential media outlet in Switzerland, and if they weren't happy, this project was going nowhere. And when I got involved, first of all, everybody was upset, which meant my client was upset, his client was upset, that it escalated to their top management for both companies, and that meant my management was upset. So everybody is upset. And they asked me if I would take on the project. And this project did not have the best reputation. I took a deep breath and I said yes anyway, and we went to work. I told my client I want to do Scrum. And he said, Scrum? What is Scrum? Okay. Now, mind you, he had been very, very upset and actually getting to the point, establishing the relationship that we could even talk to each other in a civilized tone of voice. This was the first step in saving the project. And I explained to him that Scrum is really quite simple. We're going to deliver stuff every few weeks. It's going to work. That is, we're going to pay attention to quality. And I want him to be the product owner, which means he gets to decide what functionality we're going to focus on. Oh, and by the way, once you've decided, you have to hold your word for 3 weeks. You can't change your mind in the middle of the sprint. And he says, what do you mean I can't change my mind? I can't react to anything? And said, well, we need time to get things done. And he thought, wow, this is a pretty bitter pill. But you know what? I'm desperate, so I'm going to swallow it anyway. And he agreed to do Scrum, and he agreed to be the product owner. And he went off and he prioritized first the bugs that were causing us problems, and then the missing functionality that was causing us problems. And 3 sprints, and 2 months later, and 2 releases later, we delivered all of the functionality. We got the quality in order. The client's client was happy. The client was happy. And that meant I was happy, and my boss was happy, and we all lived happily ever after. But that was actually just the beginning of a story, okay? Because that was Christmas, and we got the go-ahead to continue the project. And then he asked me another question. When can we release next year? And so I asked him, when do you want to release? And he thought for a moment, and he said, every 4 months. Okay, so that would be like end of April, end of August, end of December. Yeah, okay. And so we said, okay, we planned around that. That matched our sprint rhythm very nicely. And at the end of April, the end of August, and the end of December, we released exactly as we promised. And so when the smoke cleared, he was actually pretty happy with Scrum. Now, much, much later, okay, so I've now been working with him for about 2 years. I asked him, what did you think about the Scrum thing? What was your impression of it? And he says, at the beginning it was pretty rough. I would come to the team, wish, and he literally made the fists in the air. And the team would come back with their fists, reality. And we'd wrestle for a bit. Okay? But then we realized that we both have to compromise a bit. We'd settle down, we'd make an agreement, we'd have something that we could both live with. And then the end of the sprint would come and things would be done. And they would work. And he says, I've been doing projects all my life. And every project I've ever been on has had moments of chaos and conflict. That's a normal thing in projects. Okay? However, this is the first time that I had the chaos and conflict at the beginning of the project and not at the end of the project. And given the choice, I much prefer to have it at the beginning of the project. Scrum, conflict, agreement, calm. Okay? That's what it's all about. And that's why I can truly say, my first client, he really appreciated Scrum. It made him a better manager. He got results, he got reputation. It was good for everybody involved. Took a while, but it was good for everybody. But once he saw the light, it was good. Now, since then, that project was in 2006 to 2000. I think my involvement was 2008. He left the company, I left the company. The last thing he did before he left the company was made sure I had a mandate with his successor. So it was really a very, very strong relationship. And one thing that I've been puzzled by, it seems like with agility, first of all, it sticks really well to people. It sticks really well to people. I know people who've come in contact with agility and it's changed their lives. Some of them came to say hello to me at the stand this afternoon. But companies have a much harder time with agility. For some reason, it doesn't stick as well to companies. Beginning of last year, it seemed like companies were falling over themselves to say, agility, no, this agility stuff, it's a waste of time. Let's fire everybody with Agile in their job title. So what's happening here? Because it seems like we should be able to deliver a working product, we should be able to deliver it on time, deliver value sooner, that is actually accelerate a learning curve. The whole world is going through a learning curve. Most industries are delivering more and getting cheaper while they do it. They want to get better, they need competitive advantage. And those transformations, we want them to stick. So what's happening? Why isn't there any love? So what I'd like to do is I'd like to see how we're doing on these dimensions, okay? So I'd like everybody to stand up. Okay, let's everybody stand up, put down your phones. This is your chance to actually get some motion. Boy, I see people rolling their eyes. I have to put down my phone. I know this is a tough request, but don't worry, it's only for a couple minutes. Okay, now everybody stood up. Okay, so now imagine this is the ultimate stand-up meeting. Okay, we need a picture of this. The ultimate daily stand-up. The whole company is standing up. Okay, so what I'd like to do is see how you're doing on your Agile journey. Okay? Now, if delivering something that works is still a challenge for you, take a seat. The rest of you, please keep standing. Okay? Does anyone in your organization find that delivering working software is a problem? Okay. As far as I can tell, I may have missed one, but basically people didn't sit down. Can you guys give yourselves a round of applause? Okay? We have crossed the first hurdle. Okay, so let's go to the next hurdle. Let's see how we're doing. Can you deliver on time? Are your managers, would they say they're happy with your on-time performance? If the answer is yes, keep standing. If the answer is no, take a seat. And don't worry, we're not taking notes. Okay? Okay. Now, for those of you who are sitting down, absolutely, I would say in my students, I just had my first face-to-face Scrum class in 7 years in Colombo this weekend, and I would say this was their number one problem, delivering on time. Okay? So now let's take a look. Boy, I'd say we're down to about 10% have crossed that hurdle. Okay? How many of you are actually accelerating your ability to deliver value? Okay? Are you accelerating does your next release come sooner than your previous release? Are you getting better at it? Okay? If not, take a seat. Okay. The air is getting pretty thin. In fact, I see one person still standing in the back. Boy, and she got embarrassed. Okay, so we'll give her a round of applause, the last woman standing. Okay. So notice, it seems like we should be able to do this, but somehow we're not. Okay? And this is, I think, the problem that we're facing today. This is it should be working, but somehow it's still challenging. So I'd like to take a closer look at that. And what I want to do is I've made some observations, and I think these are things that are hiding in plain sight that we just haven't noticed yet. Okay? So tonight, I'm going to reveal them to you, one at a time. Here's the first one, here's the second one, here's the third one. Don't worry, I'm just playing with you. You didn't think I was going to reveal them all at once, did you? I mean, normally, you give the agenda and you say what you're going to say and then you say it. Well, I'm going to keep you in suspense for just a minute longer. But once we're done with this, I actually believe that the salvation to this problem lies not in our teams, but in our management. Okay? Because it's our management who they hold the company together. They decide what gets done and what doesn't get done. They set the examples for the rest of the company to live by. They define the culture. And I believe that we actually have a lot to offer to management that we haven't done yet. And so I want to give you a picture of, I think, what skills we need to be giving to our managers so that they can succeed, so that we can succeed. So let's start with our first truth. Are you ready? Is everybody ready? Take a deep breath. Okay. The first answer is, we know how to do this. I did that project back in 2006. This is what I've been teaching. This is the basis of every Scrum class, how to do this. But for some reason, it's not happening. Okay? And the time has come, I think, to take a closer look at the reasons for that. Now, it can be done, and we have the proof right here in this room. Okay, is anyone from Pick Me here? Any folks from I want to give you guys a round of applause. Okay? Pick Me was in, I think, my first Scrum class ever in Sri Lanka. We did a workshop on product, how to accelerate product development. And as far as I can tell, now I didn't hear from them since, so everything I'm saying now could be wrong. But it looks like they actually applied it. And people came to our stand today and they said they remembered that workshop and what it did for them. And 3 years later, they received a nomination from the World Agility Forum as one of the finalists in the best agile transformation category. So they really, they did it. It can be done if you want to do it. If you want to do it. Do you want to do it? Well, that's a question that I ask myself a lot. And we're going to come back to that one in a minute. So why do we do it? Well, we do it because we want to get faster. We do it because our competition is getting faster. And if we don't, well, they will. And then we have a problem. And I see this in my clients in Europe right now. I work mostly in Europe. They've realized that their innovations are too slow. They need to develop product sooner. They need to improve their competitive advantage. Otherwise, they have a serious problem. So this is what people come to talk to me about, is acceleration. By the way, I haven't really introduced myself. My name is Peter B. Stevens. I've been working with Janani and her team at Business Agility Tune-Up for 7-8 years now. We've been doing mostly Scrum trainings and workshops. I had the honor of being pretty much at the birth of the Agile hardware movement, and that's actually the projects that I'm working on now involve physical products. And like this car behind me, let's accelerate. A couple other names you might recognize, a couple of them in Sri Lanka, where I'm really proud that these companies have chosen to send their staff to us for our trainings over the years. And in a couple of cases, we've done some workshops. The rest of them, I think, are more international names. Some of them are more Swiss names. So, now I want to give you a little caveat before we go on. I talked to you about truth. How many truths are there? I mean, we know there are facts and there are alternative facts. Are there alternative truths? And is your truth the same as my truth? And it's all relative. And I come here as a foreigner, and I try to learn, but there's a lot that I don't know, there's a lot that I can't know. So how do we know that what we're hearing is truth? Well, what I'd like to invite you to do is put on your critical thinking cap. Okay? So I've been in the Agile movement for around 20 years. It's enabled me to see the world. It's now brought me to Sri Lanka 3 times. And I try to listen, and I try to look, and I try to observe, and I try to digest. And when I recognize patterns that seem to have validity, I pass them on. So learning and sharing is what it's all about. And this, by the way, this is at the heart of agility. Learn, share, collaborate, help each other. Now, when I say truth, what I really mean is I believe this to be true, but I also recognize that I could be wrong. And so whenever I say this is how it is, I often add, but I could be wrong. Okay? And admitting that I could be wrong invites someone to challenge me on it, but also increases the chance, the likelihood that we're going to land at something that is true. Okay? And so maybe the second iteration or the third iteration. So consider this the current iteration, and let's keep going. So, are you ready for your second truth? Okay, I see some people nodding. Okay, just want to make sure you're there. Okay. Agility and management have not had an easy time together. Okay? And if we go to the roots of Scrum and most other Agile methods, what's happening? We have our development teams. And our development teams are under a huge amount of pressure to create stuff. And the problem is their stakeholders are tremendous sources of ideas. And the stakeholders can contribute ideas much faster than the teams can deliver them. So what did the teams do? They said, guys, stand back, give me some space, tell me what you want, keep it reasonable, and please don't change your mind until that time is up. So it started with a pushback against management. And much of Agile, especially Scrum, is this democracy that we have here? Does the team get to overrule me as a manager? Hey, I used to make decisions, and now I just have to implement them. Somehow this doesn't feel right. And in fact, maybe you think about my conversation that I had with my first product owner. Probably went something like this. By the way, can you guys read this in the back? Give me a wave if you could read it in the back. Okay, this is good. I made my fonts big enough. I need on-time deliveries. Real simple. I need on time. And the Scrum Master comes along and says, yes, we can do this. All we got to do is be agile. Our manager asks a very naive question. So what does agile mean for me? Well, the first thing is you're not allowed to change your mind anymore. And there are all sorts of other things that you're not allowed to do. And please don't bother the team while we're working. That's called relinquishing your power. Okay? Oh, and by the way, stop micromanaging us. Don't give us the solution. Don't keep checking in. Let the team solve the problems. Now, this is kind of a weird situation because your manager, first of all, is probably a good problem solver. That's how he or she got to be a manager. And second, they've got a certain status, and they're being pushed back, and they're being told what to do by people who they used to tell what to do. And our friendly neighborhood Scrum Master says, don't worry, you're not losing your power or your authority. And the manager is thinking, but you know what? I'm still accountable. I can still be held to blame. And all of a sudden, this trust the team feels very, very risky. Okay? And this is where I think we've missed the boat in the Agile community. And in fact, I had a conversation that went exactly like this with a senior manager today. And I asked him, Scrum doesn't have a role manager. What do you think? And his face looked just like that. And I was like, wow. Okay? It's really, if you're a manager, you have a tremendous influence in where your company goes. And if it's not going to be good for you, well, why should you do it? Now, I had an aha moment at a Lean conference not too long ago. One of the founders of the Lean movement, a guy named Edward Deming, he was hugely influential in revitalizing the Japanese industry after the Second World War. He realized that managers wouldn't do things that wasn't in their own direct personal interest. And he never quite understood that, and he never found a solution to that problem. Okay? And I believe that's the problem that we face today, and this is the problem that we need to solve if we want our organizations to be truly agile. So what does that agility mean, and why wouldn't it be good for a manager? So how many of you have read the Agile Manifesto? Has anyone actually read it? Okay, I'd say I'm going to guess about half of you, okay? So those of you who haven't, it is 73 words. Okay, it's not a long document. Okay, so I'd encourage you to take a look at it. It starts out with a very simple statement. We are uncovering better ways. Something, something, something about software. If you're doing software, that's great. If you're not, you can fill in the blanks with something else by doing it and helping others to do it. So it's about learning, it's about collaboration. Now, for those of you who are really advanced, go to page 2, which is another 100 words or so, and read the first principle. Our highest priority is to satisfy the customer. Something, something, something about software. Now, today, with all the problems that the world is facing, we might even question whether satisfying the customer really should be the highest goal, but let's focus down on clarity of purpose. We not only know what we're doing, we know why we're doing it. We're uncovering better ways. Now, for me, this is a very interesting statement because the metaphor here is archaeology. We're digging, we're looking for artifacts. Do we know if we're going to find anything? No, we don't, but we keep digging anyway. Okay? This, for me, is the quintessence of hope. Okay? Hope is action in the face of very unfavorable odds. Don't give up hope. Now, another part of the Agile Manifesto, if you ask people what's the first sentence, they actually usually mention this part, individuals and interactions. I'd like to give you another word for that, which is relationships. And one of the things, as a Westerner coming eastward, coming to South Asia, one of the things I've observed is that relationships seem much more important in leadership than they are in the West. My impression is that Europe or the US is more transactional. But agility is about relationships, and that makes it also about the job of management, because what do managers do? They establish relationships within the company, with the teams, with the stakeholders, with their clients, individuals and interactions. It's all about relationships. It's all about our jobs as managers. Now, at the beginning of this segment, I started out with a couple that was kind of probably not really talking to each other, but for some reason, they did get together and they found a common interest, and I believe that developers and managers actually have a lot of common ground. Item number 1 is complexity. Item number 2 is problem solving. Okay, so let's take a closer look at that. Okay, as a software developer, as a member of a Scrum team, our job is to figure out what to build and how to build it. Okay, so we're basically responsible for the how question, and we collaborate with people who understand the market side to answer the what question. Okay, now management is also dealing with a very complex problem, but it's a different problem that we have, and it has very different characteristics. So if we look at the software side, is this going to go back? Yes. Here we have one very difficult problem to solve. We're not sure if we got the right answer. We're not even sure if we asked the right question. Okay? Here, on the management side, we don't have one problem to solve. We have millions of things that all have to fall into place. Okay? I've been spending time with a manufacturing company. I actually sat in, they call it shop floor management. It's the best daily scrum I've ever seen. The whole leadership team came together. They spent 5 minutes updating their KPIs, their board. And then they spent 15 minutes talking about the KPIs, what had changed since yesterday, okay? And in particular, what do we need to work on? Topic number 1 was safety, okay? Something had happened the day before, there was an accident, they had identified the cause, and they were putting out a call to the other section chiefs to check their area to make sure that the same thing couldn't happen in their area, okay? This sort of, and then after the meeting, the various people, they recognized the need to talk to each other, they went off, they talked. This is how you manage complexity. You look at the world the way it is today and decide what to do next. And this is what software developers are doing as well, or other product developers as they create their products. Now, there are some important differences. And I think that this is things that many of us underestimate, especially coming from the software side. The first is, on the management side, we're dealing with a different kind of risk. Okay? There are risks that have real consequences. Some of them are about money, but not all. At my shop floor management meeting, they had a topic safety and they had a topic health. Okay? So if things go wrong, they have consequences, and you can't delegate that kind of responsibility. Okay, and the higher you go in the company, the more you're personally responsible for the consequences. Okay, and this makes a topic, you've certainly heard about psychological safety many times today. This makes psychological safety actually a very difficult problem because there are risks and things do go wrong. And how do we stay cool and how do we make it okay to talk about things? And finally, the sheer number of moving parts that all have to come together at the right place at the right time. Outside of software development, okay, we have to hit a deadline. But the rest of the organization has got lots and lots of deadlines. Think of your finance department that has to make monthly reports and quarterly reports. And this all has to happen on time, and they're not allowed to fail. Okay, otherwise, bad things happen. So the sheer volume is what makes up the complexity. So we have very, very different problems. On the management side, we need to manage 1,000 different things, all of which could go wrong. On the software side, on the product side, we need to focus. Okay? And I think if we can understand the needs of the other, that's going to make it a lot easier for us to collaborate with each other. Now, I believe that agility actually does offer a brighter future for management. I believe there are a lot of the tools and the techniques and the methods which, if they are used effectively, they could do good things for leadership. And this takes me to my third truth. Okay, so let's see. Are you holding your breath? I got to squeeze this out a little bit. Otherwise, okay. So, the fact is, if our competition is getting better, we need to get better. And in order for us to get better, our leadership needs to get better at all levels. Okay, and that means kind of managers are the forgotten talent of the Agile movement. We said embrace change. We said accept changing requirements. Well, let's also embrace our management. Yes, getting our managers on board is a tough problem, but let's look for better ways of doing that. And I believe that those who do, the managers who do, you're going to be better managers. And that's going to be good for your departments, and that's going to be good for your careers. And I think this has been the missing message. So let me give you some examples of this. Now, how many of you attended the regional Scrum gathering that we held, I think it was in 2022, the virtual one a couple years ago here in Colombo? How many of you were in there for that? Okay, so a couple of you might remember these cases. I talked about them in more detail. The first was a gentleman named Walter Stutzer, who led a transformation of his company. He had attempted to do it with classical means, tried for 2 years, and the effort failed. And he started doing it with a much more agile approach, with its emphasis on clarity of purpose, visualization, collaboration, and they succeeded in 6 months. 6 months to make the turnaround. 6 months, we called this the $2 million turnaround. Sorry, the $6 million turnaround, because he saved his company in that time. Michael Morgan, Professor Michael Morgan. His company was severely challenged by COVID. The business model in their startup that they had created wasn't working because all the stores were closed. And he had a board of directors, and the board of directors were investors, and each one had their own idea for how to take the company forward, and they couldn't agree on how to move forward. And so what he did is he focused on building the relationships with the board, understanding and creating empathy across the board. First empathy, then alignment. Okay? The alignment was both on the need for the change and on what the options were, and then what the benefits of each were, and then it was possible for them to make a decision. Imagine a decision where everybody says, yep, I'm on board, or at the very least, I can live with it. I'm not going to resist it politically. There's no one with a serious objection, and there's no one going, yeah, I'm going to pretend to agree right now, but just give me a chance and I'll do my best to sabotage it. Have any of you experienced a decision like that? Okay. And finally, now this guy was more of a mentor. In fact, he was a mentor to me, not a client. Rod Collins was CEO of a major American, or a major subsidiary of a major American insurance company. And they had like 20 companies that shared the same brand, but there was no centralized command authority. So it was more like a federation of companies, but they needed to act as one. So he couldn't command, but what he discovered is that he could activate the collective intelligence of the staff of the leaders of the specialists in his company to think more like one brain. And when they did that, they would come up with a decision, again, that they could all support. And his observation is quite simple. Facilitated meetings are dramatically more effective than committee-style meetings. Facilitation. You've probably heard that in a context of Scrum, because a lot of what we do as a Scrum Master is facilitating. What if we could facilitate meetings at the leadership level so we could be effective like a Scrum team? And his observation is real simple. Nobody is smarter than everybody, so let's get everybody in on the thinking process. Now, I've written about these cases in my book, Personal Agility. If you come by downstairs, I've got copies for it. What I'd like you to do now for a moment is imagine, thanks to your leadership, if you're a project manager, if you're a team leader, if you're a department head, thanks to your leadership, your company is able to meet all of these challenges. What would that be like? What would that do for your career? So what I'd like to do at this point is offer you maybe an inventory of the skills that are going to be helpful to you as a leader in order to be able to do that, in order to make this happen. What we often forget is that most of our organizations, they exist to do something. Organizations are really about producing something, providing a service, okay? Getting things done. So you've got some kind of objectives that you have to achieve. And this is what your team needs to achieve. Now, exactly the context, are these long-term goals, are these recurring goals? That depends a bit on your context. But this is the stuff that's important. And the problem is there's a lot of change happening all the time. We've heard that in pretty much every presentation today. We need to respond effectively to change. Now, you could say a flag responds very effectively to changes in the wind, but it doesn't reliably point the direction. If we're going to achieve goals, yes, we need to respond to change, but we need to do that in the context of achieving our objectives. Now, a lot of change is self-inflicted. That causes us problems. Some change comes from the market, the legal situation, technological developments. These we need to react to. And so what we need to get good at is being able to achieve our objectives despite all the demands for change. Now, that's what the organization needs to do. There's a third skill that you need as a manager in order to do that, and that's to build the necessary relationships. Relationships with your team, relationships among your teams, to your stakeholders, to your clients. So these are the three basic areas. Now let's decompose that a little bit. What does that mean in detail? Achieving your objectives. Okay, the first thing that's really helpful here is clarity of purpose. What are we trying to achieve and why? Then we have the tools that you learned in Scrum or Kanban about visualization, cadence, delivering things on regular intervals. These enable you to make progress and verify that you're making progress. Now this is where it gets hard, because the first thing is making decisions. Okay, it's easy to decide something. But how do you make a decision that's going to hold, say, for 2 weeks or 4 weeks, or, that's just for a sprint, okay? How do you make a decision that's going to hold for the 6 months that it takes you to create the product? Okay? Well, the magic word here is consensus. How do you build consensus? How do you get that agreement and alignment that this is the way we want to go, so that you don't have constantly changing winds within the company? Now, having said all that, yeah, we want to achieve our goals. We still need to be able to respond to change. So what are the skills that you need to respond to change? Well, everything that I just told you about what you need to achieve objectives, you need to do that too. But on top of that, you need to be able to recognize the need to do something, that the change has happened. You need to prioritize them. Some of them you're going to do, some of them you're going to postpone, and some of them you're not going to do at all. And for the ones that you decide to do, then you need to act on them, okay? And the quicker you can do this, the better you can respond to change. And the more systematically you can do this, the better you can respond to change. This is, again, where activating the intelligence of your team, of your organization, I call this collective problem solving, is essential. And finally, alignment. Not just trying to find a consensus, but really building alignment, that everyone is in agreement with you We're going there and not there. Okay? This means you have no internal friction. This is another word for reducing friction within your organization. And finally, what about the relationship building? In some ways, this is the hardest of all. Because as managers, one thing we're really good at is talking. We do it professionally. It's how we got where we are. But before we can talk, or before talking serves any purpose, we need to listen. And the prerequisite for listening, I prefer the term trust culture. Now, many of you have heard the term psychological safety. A trust culture includes psychological safety, but it goes a step further. There is also an attention to results. So there's two dimensions. There's psychological safety and do we care about results? And so what you need to do is be able to create a context where people both feel safe to speak, safe to raise issues, safe to ask questions, but they're still focused on getting something done. Now, strangely enough, the key skill here is not talking. The key skill is listening. I listen to you, you listen to me, we care about what each other is saying. I could have written empathy in here, which is really what we're striving for. First we listen, then we talk. And then when we talk, we use powerful questions, clarifying questions, questions which surface information and help us solve the problem. By the way, some of you may have noticed powerful questions are also the tools of the coach. So coaching skills are going to be really important. Now, I don't call this coaching because as managers or other leaders, we're not necessarily coaches, but the same toolbox is extremely useful. Now, coaching questions, powerful questions, they trigger the other person to think. They work really well on a one-on-one basis, but as soon as we have a larger group, all of a sudden they don't work anymore. You ask one person a powerful question, they start to think, and someone else jumps in and changes the subject. So what that means is that leading a group is different than working with an individual. So there's two levels of skill here. I call this facilitation here, although I'm not sure that captures all of it. So, what have we discussed? This time I'm going to give you the list. Item number 1. Developers can deliver on time. All of those 5 boxes, you can do it if you want to. There's proof right here in Sri Lanka that it works. Your organization can do it too. Believing that it's possible is the first step to making it possible. I believe that better relationships, the interactions between the people, by the way, this is also what defines your culture. Okay? And by changing those relationships, by changing those interactions, you can also change your culture. Culture reacts much better than most people think because we can make small changes in how we interact to get better results. And finally, for those of you who are managers, whether you call yourself a project manager or a program manager or a product manager, if you up your skills, you're going to be a better manager, you're going to get better results, and I believe that's going to be good for you. So, what I would like to do, under the heading of sharing information, you've heard my pitch for management, for better management. Who wants to be a better manager? Is there anyone here who wants to be a better manager? Okay, I got a couple people. Okay, excellent. Okay, I am really glad to hear that. So what I want to do is I want to help you get started. I want to share some information with you. Surprise, surprise, I've written a book about it. I've written 2 books. One is really focused on these interactions. That's the book on personal agility. The other is a bridge between stakeholders and development. I have 2 examples here. My wife in the front row has got 2 more examples. What I'd like to do is give them away. Now, how do we figure out who's worthy? Does anyone know the game rock, paper, scissors? I figure we need to do something fun to close things out. You know, rock, paper, scissors? So, rock, scissors. Rock beats scissors because, well, the scissor is metal and the rock is hard and okay. So, scissors, paper. The scissors cut the paper, so scissors wins. Paper, rock. Paper encloses the rock loses. So anyone can be a winner, anyone can be a loser. And what we're going to do is we're going to play elimination rock, paper, scissors. So if anyone would like a book, now is your chance to stand up and we'll play rock, paper, scissors. And the game is real simple. Oh, I just had an idea. Would you like to be the... Okay, never mind. So, I'm going to play rock, paper, scissors. If you beat me, you stay in. If you don't beat me, that is, if you do the same thing or a loser, then you get to sit down. So let's everybody stand up, and let's see. We're going to have a rock, paper, scissors championship. Okay? So, I'm going to count to 3. When I count to 3, I want you to raise your hand with your play. So, rock, paper, scissors. Rock, paper, scissors. Okay? If you beat me, you get to keep standing. If you don't beat me, you get to sit down. And a tie, you have to sit down. And when we get down to less than 4, then we have our winners. Okay, so are you ready? Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, I played scissors. So if you played paper or scissors, you get to sit down. Those of you who played rock are still up. Okay, and as expected, okay, I assume that everybody is playing fair. So if your neighbor's not playing fair, kindly call them on it. Okay, so we're going to do this again. On 3, rock, paper, or scissors. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I played rock. If you played paper, you keep standing. Everyone else gets to sit down. Okay, so I think this is going to be the deciding round. Okay, we might do 2 more rounds, but we're getting good. So, on 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, I played rock. If you played paper, you get to keep standing. If you played anything else, you get to sit down. So, how many do we have? We have 1 in the front, 2, 3, 4. You know what? We have 5. So those of you who are still standing, I'm going to call that close enough for government work. So congratulations to our winners, and thank you very much. So the 5 of you, please come up after the talk to collect our book. We now have 4 minutes left. This is the point where I say thank you and invite questions. Maybe one last thing. I'm giving away free manager caps downstairs. Okay, if you want to come by and say hello, get a cap, get a star, I'd be delighted to meet you. With that, I'm going to say thank you very much, and we have 3 minutes and 55 seconds for questions. So I'm going to pass the talk. How do we do questions? Do we do questions? Does anyone have a question? Questions going once. Now there's coffee outside, I think. If not, there's a bar down the road. Okay, so with that, I'm going to say thank you very much. It's been a great time. I look forward to seeing you later today and tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter, for your insightful and inspiring keynote. We deeply appreciate the knowledge and wisdom you shared with us today. It has been a privilege having you on stage with us. Let's give Peter a very big round of applause. So it was truly an inspirational session and keeping you up during the last few minutes of our session. And so I would like to invite Rumesh to give away the token of appreciation to Peter.